so that we are able to actually see safety implemented within our hearts, within our families, within our communities. We thank you, dear Father, and ask these and all blessings in thy righteous name. Amen. Dr. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Planning Committee and the many committed leaders of Howard County, the community, who have come together to respond to a moment that calls for a collective courage, compassion, and, as you all know, action. We are gathered here not just because of recent acts of violence that have shaken our community, but because we believe in the power of coming together. Tonight marks the beginning of a united effort, united for safety, a community-wide conversation on gun violence in Howard County. This is more than just an event. It is a call to action, a space for healing, and a commitment to the safety and success of our youth and families. Our goal this evening is threefold. First, to connect residents, families, advocates, and elected officials in one space with one purpose. Second, to learn about the programs, strategies, and resources available at work in our community. And third, to act, to generate ideas and strategies that will move us forward in tangible, successful ways. Tonight, moderated by Mr. Vic Carter, you will hear from voices across sectors in Howard County. Our county executive, Dr. Calvin Ball, the police department, the public school system, judges, student, and a parent, and a mental health professional, and representatives from the Youth Empowerment Workforce Development. These are leaders who are already doing amazing work, and those who are already ready to roll up their sleeves and join them. You'll also have the opportunity to share your own voice, your experiences, and your ideas during our action planning session. This is the first in a series of conversations, but let it also be the beginning of a movement where we are not just reacting to violence, but building a future where safety, opportunity, and hope are the norm for our children, their families, and their neighborhoods. Together, we can turn the page, turn the pain into purpose, and purpose into progress. Thank you again for your presence and your partnership. Let's get to work.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for your partnership, your leadership here and throughout our community. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first of all start off by giving my heartfelt gratitude to St. John Baptist Church and its fantastic leader, Reverend Turner. Please give them a big round of applause. The unwavering faith, consistent guidance, the steadfast leadership have continued to lift our community up time and time again. Tonight we gather because our community has faced painful events that have shaken us deeply. Any loss of life is devastating, especially when it's due to violence and especially when it's one of our young people. When tragedy occurs in our community, we collectively grieve as one Howard County family. Our hearts break for the families and friends of those who have been injured or killed. And this is a time when community support is more meaningful than ever. This is when we must work together to ensure our residents are safe and feel safe, And this series of violent events is disturbing and impacts our ability to feel safe. We continue to see the long-term effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly on our young people. The pandemic disrupted the crucial development years, leaving many struggling with mental health challenges, educational setbacks, and limited opportunities for engagement. This is why we prioritize mental health support, including our partnership with Grassroots Crisis Intervention Center, which responded to more than 100,000 crisis contacts in the past year alone. And we've gone even further by investing directly in programming designed to uplift and engage our young people. Through initiatives like the Youth Engagement Programming Grants and the Youth Leadership Work Group, both launched in spring of 2023, we've created real pathways for our youth to thrive. To date, we have provided more than 10,000 of our young people with opportunities and collectively invested more than $1.5 million into community-led youth programming. This has supported more than 35 nonprofit organizations, and I'd like all of those who are part of our YEP initiatives, please just stand for a moment. Let everybody see some of our partners in the room. These are some of the leaders and nonprofits who do the work of engaging with our young people and building our future. Programs that provided mentorship, mental health resources, academic tutoring, leadership training, career exploration, and safe, structured activities after school hours. This year alone, we also committed an additional $100,000 specifically to stand and push mentoring programs, furthering their essential work, mentoring and supporting our youth who need it most. These two programs create critical mentoring relationships with young people, adopting a community-based violence prevention approach to support. And working closely with our Howard County Police Department and other stakeholders, we remain committed to taking strong measures to ensure that public safety remains a priority. Since 2018, we have added 24 new patrol positions to our Howard County Police Department, marking the largest increase of sworn personnel in 15 years. In fact, Howard County Police Department's increase in funding has allowed the department to recently graduate the largest police academy class in 30 years. That's more officers for community policing, more officers to engage our youth, more officers to make it so that our officers also have the time off that they need for their mental health. Now, we know that in a county of more than 330,000 people, there will never be zero crime. We also know that one crime is one crime too many. Our officers have been working diligently in making quick arrests in these dangerous and deadly incidences, and I'm grateful for their work and partnership. Now, gun crimes committed by our young people are plaguing many communities across our nation, and Howard County is not immune. While a vast majority of gun crimes committed by our young people are targeted, that means involving individuals who know one another, it does not eliminate the importance of our crime reduction efforts to save those lives. Our police department rapidly implemented a comprehensive and strategic crime reduction plan focusing squarely on the mall, the Meriwether District, and the surrounding downtown Columbia area where we've seen the latest incidences. And since launching this plan on February 27th, the police department has received no more reports of gun crimes or shootings in those areas. Now, in addition to quickly establishing plans for full-time units at the mall, The increased police presence has enabled officers to address nuisance, quality of life issues, disorderly conduct, and work with our sheriff's office and state police in making sure that we positively engage our young people. We know that visibility isn't enough, but working with our dedicated community outreach pathway section or COPS, the officers in the mall are working with in the Meriwether District on a permanent basis, and these COPS officers specialize in building relationships and gathering critical intelligence, and their daily presence helps identify concerns before they escalate. Now, in recognizing the need to improve information sharing with the Department of Juvenile Services, our police department has also begun partnering with DJS to attend pre-scheduled events as part of its juvenile monitoring program. And since the establishment of this partnership, officers have attended 3 events garnering increased positive interaction with teens and the DJS system. And now our police department and juvenile services staff share information and keep the lines of communication more open than they've ever been before. Now, in the face of these challenges, we also have seen resilience. We've seen love, we've seen compassion, we've seen community coming together. We are a community that works to meet the moment and rise to the challenge. And as leaders, educators, community members, it's our responsibility to ensure that our young people have every opportunity to succeed academically, socially, emotionally, mentally. Now, Howard County has laid the groundwork for the long-term success of our young people. Many of us in this room have been working tirelessly, yet too often in isolation. And to further our community efforts to support our young people, I recently established the Youth Engagement Strategies Council, or YES. YES is not merely a board or a commission that you might see sometimes where they meet and then nothing happens. We're bringing together nearly 30 influential voices across Howard County, including educators, faith leaders, nonprofits, youth mentors, mental health professionals, public safety officials, to ensure that we approach youth violence and safety comprehensively and effectively. If you are a member of the YES Council, please stand and be recognized. These leaders are already making tangible strides, and just last night, representatives from STAND, PUSH, Alpha Achievers, and Swanfield Elementary School attended the Howard County Board of Education's Community Advisory Council meeting, and their presence affirmed the best solutions start right here at the grassroots level. And as we consider, that's right, grassroots level, we love grassroots, y'all getting it done. And as we consider community safety and youth empowerment, I want to specifically acknowledge our superintendent, Bill Barnes. I know he's not here, but he has members of his team here, our other dedicated educators, administrators, staff in our public school systems who fight for the safety and opportunity each and every day. And ultimately, solutions lie here, in the unity, the compassion, the collective actions of our community. They are found in every parent determined to safeguard their child, and every educator investing in the potential of their students, and in every community leader dedicated to breaking the cycle of violence. Tonight, let this gathering serve as a renewal of our shared commitment, not just reacting to violence, but actively preventing it. Not just responding to tragedy, but diligently working to ensure fewer tragedies occur. Let's continue saying yes to collaboration, yes to unity, yes to the investment of our young people and our future. And yes, to building a safer, stronger, more resilient Howard County. I thank you all for being here tonight and for joining us all in this critical work. Let us remember that our work does not end when we walk out the door. It continues in our schools, our homes, our neighborhoods. And as we move forward, I'm reminded of the words from Galatians 6:9. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. We will not give up, and we will not grow weary. We will keep showing up for our young people, for each other, and for the future of this community we call home. And may we leave here tonight not only inspired, but ready to act, united in our commitment to building lasting safety, lasting peace, lasting opportunity for every resident. And I thank you as we continue to walk forward together. God bless you.
At this time, as we prepare for our moderator, Vic Carter, we're asking those on the first panel, Keisha Graves, Judge Porter, Officers Bennett and Mullenix, and Maurice Frazier, if you would please come and take your seats at the panel.
Thank you so much, Reverend Barnes. Looking out on this crowd, I am always very excited about what happens here at St. John Baptist Church. That's my seat right over there, in case you guys ever come, right over in that area over there. I'm so delighted to be here this evening to be a part of this very important discussion that affects our entire community. And what I also love is seeing the number of people who represent different agencies, representing different fraternities and sororities, who are here tonight, who are engaged as well in this struggle to make sure that our children are safe and that our community is safe. And speaking of fraternities, don't let my blue jacket fool you. I am a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And Brother Ball, thank you so much for your work and your dedication to Howard County. Living in Howard County is such a great joy because we know that the people who occupy the government agencies that represent this county are really doing some work, and they're doing some fantastic work. Not only do I get my trash picked up, I get my street plowed and everything, I also know that they are much more dedicated to the actual individuals and people who represent the Howard County area and who live here. Tonight, we begin this discussion talking about a number of different topics. We have questions that have been submitted previously, and we want you to be able to hear from important people in Howard County and hear their take on a number of issues that affect us, affect our young people, and particularly addressing the issue of violence in Howard County. I'd like to begin by asking each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, name and position, so forth.
Hi, my name is Dr. Katrina Folks. I am representing the parent section in Perfect Generation Ministries as well as Moms Demand Action.
Good evening, everyone. I am Stephanie Porter. I'm one of our judges at the Circuit Court for Howard County. Prior to being a judge, I was a magistrate for about 6.5 years at the county as well, and I live right down the street, and I just want to thank you for being able to be here tonight for this important conversation.
Likewise, don't let the blue suit fool you. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But my name is Maurice Frazier. I'm a magistrate in Howard County. As a matter of fact, I took Judge Porter's position when she was elevated to the bench. Prior to that, I was a prosecutor in Howard County, working for Mr. Richard Gibson over there for about 15 years. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Phil Mullenix. I'm been with the Howard County Police Department for 24 years now. I'm currently a captain. I'm a commander for our Southern District Patrol Operations, which is pretty much all of Columbia and North Laurel.
Good evening. My name is Major Terrence Benn. I'm the Deputy Chief for Administration with the Howard County Police Department, and I too am a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
You see a pattern developing here? You know, they always say that he is alpha, and I've forgotten what the rest of it is. Let's begin now this discussion. Let's start with our officers representing the Howard County Police Department. Major Terrence Benn and Captain Phil Mullinex, either one of you may answer this. What specific changes can the police department make to help prevent youth from turning to violence?
So I think that's a very interesting question because I think the police department can always add to their repertoire to ensure that young people are actively engaged in their communities. Currently, we have our youth engagement section, our school resource officer sections engage with young people as it relates to bear tracks, pledge camps, and our CAP, which is a community action program, athletic program. We also partner with our Minority Officers Association. We partner with schools to help with tutoring programs and meeting those sorts of needs. As it relates to what we can do in addition, I think what's important is understanding what problems are, right? Because when we begin to have a conversation with what I can do, what my organization can do to help young people, I can't answer that question without a clear understanding as to what the community wants us to do. We've had a lot of conversations surrounding how police engage with the community, what's important and what we see is valuable. However, no one is sharing exactly what does that engagement look like past the Police Accountability Acts. So when I was a kid, and full circle it, when I was a kid, we had Officer Friendly. Officer Friendly walked in the neighborhood. They continuously talked to us. They reprimanded us. Our parents were okay with that being reprimanded. In 2025, no one can tell children much of anything. So I think it's important for, Sir Robert Peel put it best, the authority of the police department is given to us by the community, which means we can only do what you permit us to do. And I know that's a lot of saying stuff, but the only way for us to truly understand what a 2025 police department looks like for our community, because I think it's important for us to understand that we live in Howard County, Maryland. We don't live in Baltimore City. We don't live in Prince George's County. We live in Howard County. Howard County is a very unique place. So we have to make sure that our community, we are asking our police community to give us what we need to be successful, not copying from some other place because they had a program that worked for them. That may not work for us based upon our needs. So I think this conversation, being in a space such as this with open, candid dialogue, creates an opportunity for us to truly deliver programming that connects to our children.
Officer Mullinex, let's follow up a little bit with what Major Ben was just saying. He talked about how you arrive on the scene and you may not know exactly what the problem is. From your vantage point, as an officer with many years of service here in Howard County, how would you describe the problems as it relates to young people, and what would you categorize as being like the top issue or concern that they are facing and you're facing?
Well, a lot of it is you're patrolling out and patrolling and trying to get to know everybody in your beat, in your area. And along with that, we are getting calls, obviously, from the community in which these young folks may still live. And, having that fine balance between responding to calls that are coming in from community members and also addressing whatever that problem may be. And I think really, building that connection with your young folks in your beat area is very important. And obviously getting to know who they are and who their parents or guardians may be, and establishing that rapport is very important. There's a lot of other programs that have come about, and I think what the Major said here is very important. It's not for us to come here and dictate what programs we need to be running, things like that. these forums like tonight and being able to receive and get feedback and ideas are very important from the community and help us to improve all of our operations and how we interact with everybody. But one of the programs that we're doing now is if we see from the Department of Juvenile Services has a child in need of supervision program that they have. So if we see that there's an issue here where maybe a child is involved in something that it's really not necessarily a crime, but it's also maybe something that's affecting the community quality of life. It could be anything from kids playing out in the street or blocking traffic or type of things like that, or that people say are nuisances and things like that. We're able to either go to those parents or guardians, or if we're not able to establish that communication, we can make referrals as well for there to be further follow-up from Department of Juvenile Services to see if those children are receiving the services and attention and care that they should be getting.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Magistrate Maurice Frazier, two-part question here for you. First of all, many people may not understand your role and exactly what you do and how you fit into this whole issue of crime and juvenile crime. I wonder if you would explain that for us. And secondly, is there a particular age at which tendency toward violence seems to be more evident?
So the way I've tried to explain my job, I guess the best layman's way to put it is I'm diet judge. None of the taste, but all the flavor. I work at the behest of our circuit court judges. I handle a variety of issues, everything from divorces, child support, child custody. For our purpose tonight, the bulk of juvenile cases come before me and other magistrate in Howard County. And so we make reports and recommendations to be signed off by our judges in terms of what to do with our youth once their juvenile justice involved. And so that word's very important because in the juvenile system for magistrates, they're not found guilty, they're found involved. And what we try to do is we try to go ahead and do our best job to make sure they mature in a fashion going forward to not reoffend. I was having a conversation with some folks in the back, and it was, my charge as a magistrate, the benchmark for success is not to see these kids again. That's not a negative thing. It's, you're here, we've done a 180 in your behavior, and now you're maturing in a fashion, you're going to school, you're no longer committing crime. You're making your parents proud, and you're doing all the things that you can do. So that's sort of what a magistrate is. I forget your second question.
And the second question was, is there a particular age at which tendency toward violence seems to be more evident?
I don't know if there's a particular age. What I see in my day-to-day is that, like with most young people, they're not doing things in a vacuum. They're operating with others. So I'll see a case that will have 3 or 4 youth, ages 13, 14, 15, and 16, 14, 15, and 16, all operating together. I don't think there's a critical sort of stage where they start or begin to do crime. For my purposes, though, I don't take inventory of the age. I take inventory of the child. And once that sort of mass hits, what do I do? How do I respond? Is it holding the parent more accountable? Is it putting that child in the facility? Is it putting that child on GPS or community detention? It's trying to not just do check this box, or check this box, but a very specific and targeted way to make sure that youth becomes better. One of the things that I've tried to do, or I've done actually, is create a program with the Department of Juvenile Services called Project Elevate, which will allow some of our juvenile justice involved youth to go to community college to get their GED or their AA. Oftentimes, humbly speaking, the cross-section of crime for me is a cross-section between poverty and despair. Folks tend to go ahead and commit crimes where they don't see a pathway forward and they don't have the resources to go ahead and get what they want. Hopefully, through Project Elevate, they can get their GED, they can get the high school diploma, they can get their AA, they can transform their lives, not only for themselves, but for their families themselves.
Very good. Thank you so much. You mentioned, and we talked about age just a little bit. That's a perfect segue to the question I have now for Honorable Judge Porter from the Circuit Court. What process determines if an offender is classified as an adult versus youth?
So, generally speaking, anyone under the age of 18 is usually charged in the juvenile system, but for certain levels of crimes. In under 13, we talked about a little bit about the sins petitions, because someone under 13 can't be charged on a delinquency petition. There are certain more serious levels of crimes, such as your carjackings, your robberies or armed robberies, and rapes, and a whole host of very serious offenses that at the age of 16, you can be charged as an adult. And then there is a waiver process where a youth charged as an adult can seek to be waived back to the juvenile system. There's also a process that the state's attorney's office can seek to have a juvenile who's charged as a juvenile waived up to the adult system. So that's, I won't get into the specific crimes, but take it as generally your more serious crimes are when you see kids automatically charged as adults. And then you have that waiver process. There are certain crimes that are automatically charged in the district court, in traffic-related crimes, boat-related crimes, or those offenses that carry incarceration. Those you're automatically charged as adults, and it goes to the district court, I think, for DUI, certain levels. But I think the waiver system is something that people often don't know about.
So the level of discretion depends upon the severity of the crime as well as
Yeah.
your own.
And it's not discretion. I just want to make sure it's an automatic charging as an adult. That's pursuant to the law for those serious types of offense. There isn't the jurisdiction initially in the juvenile case unless and until that youth is waived back to the juvenile system. And along with those charging, if you're charged as an adult, technically first where you're held is as an adult until there's certain changes in that when there's a bail review and a judge orders a youth to be held in a juvenile facility. But if you're charged as an adult, you generally go one way, and if you're charged as a juvenile, there's a different way. Does that answer you?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Let's turn now to parents, and representing parents here tonight, Dr. Katrina Folks. Dr. Folks, of course, many parents would much rather their children stay small, but they're going to grow up. And when they do, that increases the risk for them becoming involved or being exposed, at least, to more serious crimes. How can schools, churches, and local leaders better support families who are trying their best, but kind of feel overwhelmed when it comes to all of this?
Ooh, that's a good question. Speaking from experience of raising 4 sons and having 7 grandchildren here for 19 years in Howard County, and then also speaking in the aspect as a nurse, case manager through my nonprofit, the best way that all of these entities can, and organizations that can help our families, our parents, is really connecting with them, providing them those outlets, those resources, really paving the streets, really sitting down, talking, not judging. Parents, it's hard. Everybody here that's a parent can relate and know that it is extremely hard. And when you are struggling as a parent and you're have the skills that are short, and you're embarrassed and don't want to say something to somebody because somebody is judging you, and you're doing the best that you can, all you want is somebody to approach you and say it's going to be okay with no judgment. They want to be able to say that, okay, well, let me walk with you instead of just tell you Or well, how about you just go to this place and they'll help you, instead of just grabbing their hand and saying, hey, I understand. Taking that extra 5 minutes can save somebody's life, because you don't know what parents go through mentally when you're raising children in a violent world, unless you are a parent yourself. And that's the best that I can answer, is that we really just need to really embrace our parents without judgment and meet them where they are. Social work 101. Meet them where they are and not push something on them, and walk with the parents along the way.
So this truly is all of our responsibilities, parents and non-parents. The children who are sitting in front of you in the pew in church, talk to them, get involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The worst kid can be the best kid on this earth. I know my son Kimari in church used to have the worst attitude. And let me tell y'all something. He is the one out of the 4 sons that will have given you the shirt off his back. Never judge a child for their outer experience. I actually adopted D'Artagnan, and I think you helped me with that process at the age of 14. When everybody else counted him out, he was a blood. His biological mother treated him like garbage. But let me tell you something. You don't turn a kid away because of their outer experience or outer appearance. He actually finished jump school, just graduated in Texas. So that's what happens when you can embrace the young people of the world, just non-judgment, walking up to them, embracing them, and loving them and their family for who they are is most important. And that's what we need. We need selfless people, people who are non-competing against each other and truly embracing each other as a unit, because we are a village. And that is my motto with Perfect Generation Ministries. We are a village. It don't take just one organization, it takes us all. So if one organization knows that a child has or a parent has more than one issue, and they know that they're stretched to the limit, and they say, hold up, I know of this other organization. How about I tie you into that person? How about I call that person and physically get you in contact with that person? Maybe that takes the stress off of the mother who has worked 2 and 3 jobs just to keep a roof over her kid's head and barely can get food stamps or medical or anything else because she make $53 too much. Because that's what I deal with on a daily basis. And that's what needs to be done, is actually physically connecting one organization to the next organization with that parent and not leaving that parent cold.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You were so good. I didn't even look over my timekeeper over here. I'm not even going to pay attention to what's going to let that story run its course. Let's go back to our police officers. Has the police department considered an increase in positive community engagement with area youth, such as recreation? I think you may even mentioned a couple programs that are already in existence.
So we practice those programs currently, and we're always trying to figure out ways to be creative with engagement. A couple of the programs I would, if Lieutenant Lloyd could stand up for a moment. I brought a scribe, Lieutenant Lloyd is my, he is actually the community outreach commander. And I would like for him to share some of the community programming that we do specifically for our kids. I think that if he can speak to the breadth of the programming in this space as we begin to talk about how we can work together to come up with solutions. You can't do that with a slight overview, but a more detailed overview so we're not duplicating efforts. If that's okay with you, Brother Carter.
Oh, yes, yes, sir. You got a gun.
all right,
So,
sir.
yes.
Well, like you said, I'm the community outreach commander for the police department. What I oversee is our community outreach liaison section, our COPS group, victim assistance, and crisis intervention. And what we can do with youth is obviously to meet them in their space. I don't oversee our youth division, but there's programs that we run, Bear Tracks and Pledge. These are programs that are in the middle schools and the high schools, and they're camps. And what they're designed to do is connect the youth with the police department. So you can see officers outside of the uniform. You can spend time with them, really get to know them. They can talk about their families, their kids. Those are two of the big things that we do. There's other programs that I'm not overly familiar with. However, those are two of the big ones. And what my liaison group does is, outside of simply dealing with the community issues, is they go out to all the schools as well. So let's say that a school wants a child to be read to, or just for example, the other day I was at Patuxent Valley Middle School for a career fair, and I got to meet the youth and talk to them. And these are the things we're trying to break down, the barriers. And once you break down the barriers and understand that I'm just a normal person, and I think that youth can relate to that. I have a child who's at Hammond High School. I'll be working with Mr. Vincent James of the Alpha Achievers. I'll be going to talk to their group in probably just a couple weeks and just talk to them about myself, my career, my life, just so people can understand what we're like. So really it's about connecting the youth, having them understand who we are, and that you can come up to us and engage with us and just learn a little bit more about us. Hopefully that answers the question to some degree.
And I also think a couple of programs that's important during the summer months is the CAP program. That's where we are in the village centers once a week with a trailer, with video games, with basketball, with soccer, and refreshments. And kids, even though we discourage, parents would drop their kids off and go enjoy themselves and come back and pick their kids up. So those are some of the activities. And then we also have the Youth Explorers program, which is geared more towards those. It's a branch of the Boy Scouts. It's geared more towards those who are interested in law enforcement careers. So they practice, they meet once a month, they get to work events, they learn how to do traffic enforcement, traffic control, those sorts of things. But as it relates to, I believe your question was, what can we do? Again, it goes back to we already have done some tutoring projects. We're doing some reading projects because literacy is important. And even though we have affluence, everybody's not affluent. So it's important for us to understand the value of education. And a part of the police department's job is identifying problems when we go to homes to try to connect them to resources. And all of those resources are voluntary. So we can't make someone take those resources and then encourage them to follow through. And they're oftentimes, the community resource officers are the conduit to that degree of connectivity. They're the ones who are identifying students who need additional help, be it holiday season with the unions. They use resources to connect families with, they provide resources to connect families of underserved. I think those are some of the things that we're currently doing. And again, in this space, I would be definitely open to ideas of things that perhaps we can add to our repertoire of opportunities to outreach with young people.
Okay, thank you so very much. A number of questions I want to try to get to. We're running out of time here for this particular segment, but I do want to go to Magistrate Frazier. You see the youth up close. What immediate changes in policy or funding would make the biggest difference?
I think Judge Porter and I will answer that together. There's never not enough money. You know, The more resources, the better. What I encounter so much in our youth, and I mentioned this in my early remarks, is that sort of cross-section of poverty and despair. But what I try to do, without using any money, is to make sure we breathe life into these children. The success is just around the corner. When I walked in this, in this church, the very first thought that came to my head was sort of Proverbs 4:18, that the path of the just, like the shining light, which shineth more into the perfect day. We can lay that path with dollars, but it also must be laid with character, and not just from the folks in this room, but your friends, your colleagues. We're all here right now because we are dedicated individuals. As Dr. King mentioned, justice requires sacrifice, struggling, and suffering. We're all willing to sacrifice. We're all willing to suffer and struggle for a better day in our communities. If we had more resources in our schools to identify youth who may have learning disabilities, if we had better resources for, I know there's, I don't know if Mr. Duncan's here, for our STAND program. We need more mentors, because when these youth come before me, so many times their moms tell me, this is the first time a man has addressed my child like this in a positive way, breathing life into him, saying that he can do it. And I look across this whole expanse of individuals, of fantastic people that I've met. I mean, it's darn near probate in here, it feels like. But these people are here because you are dedicated, but we have to expand that. Now, I'm not in the arena of where those dollars go. I am a humble public servant. I am neutral and detached. Cases come before me. I make the best call pursuant to the case law and statute. I do the best that I can. I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're asking where resources can go, I think there's never not enough resources for our children. The more we can do, the better.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Would you like to add to that?
I just want to add on to that. Our job as a magistrate, and then for me, especially when I'm looking at what probation conditions are necessary to have a positive path forward in rehabilitation, we have to look at what services are available in this community. And that can be tough. Everyone thinks we're a very affluent county, but what is available sometimes we don't know about or isn't necessarily offered through DJS in our community. And part of, so when we have new programs such as Elevate, when we got mentoring programs, that's really important. Resources for parents that we can direct them to, because I acknowledge and I appreciate your comments, Dr. Folks, because I've had parents come into court and say, I've been looking for mentoring for my son for years because I'm me, I'm mom, there's no male. But it took for him to have to get in trouble in order for there to be a mentoring program. So identifying the needs in the community and having it available even before they're court involved, because there's nothing better that we would love than to not have any cases, right? But we have to identify what resources are truly needed in the community and make sure that they are available in order for a magistrate, a judge, to be able to order that youth into those services. So it's really important, and we don't know all the services that are out there, or DJS doesn't know all of the services that are out there, or who has good mentoring programs, who has quality mentoring programs, because there's nothing worse than no mentoring than bad mentoring, right? And if that's what the kids are left with, that's when they're ending up in court.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Now on to our parent again, Dr. Katrina Folks. Is there a discussion about guns and youth violence, generally a topic among parents? I mean, is this something that's being discussed in the homes?
Absolutely. There's people want to avoid the hard topics. Nobody want to talk about gun violence. Nobody want to educate their kids about gun violence. And it's so important to educate. Without educating our babies, just like how they were newborns and they go and try to touch a socket and you tell them no, 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 no. Or they touch the stove, no, 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 hot. And you're educating them. You still have to educate our young people about gun violence because it's so important. A lot of parents have guns in the home, but they think their children are not watching them. They think their children do not see their guns. They're not locked up properly. That's why we have Be Smart with Moms Demand Action. We have these resources to student demand action, to actually come into the schools and educate the kids and to talk to the parents, to start the conversation, peer support groups. But we have to educate and we have to teach the parents if they don't know how to talk to their kids. Because some parents were taught not to talk to the kids, just to demand them. You're gonna do what I say and I say only, you better. And sometimes that's not the right approach. Sometimes we have to sit down with our babies and say, hey, I hear that you lost a friend today. I know it's hard. I have a parent now who 2 of their children lost their best friend at Oakland Mills Middle School from that shooting at the mall. And a mom avoided the conversation, and I had to sit her down and say, look, you see your baby he's not doing well in school now. He is struggling. And sometimes parents have the hard time acknowledging that their baby is struggling. It's called denial. Because sometimes they think that they're a bad parent. And it's not the case. It's just you need to learn how to communicate and break the chain, break the pattern, sit down and have a good conversation with our kids. We're so busy that we forget that we, as adults, have a hard time handling stress. Our babies do too.
All right. Thank you very much. We are running out of time here. I want to ask one last question here. I'm going to direct this to Judge Porter. Judge Porter, is there any liability for parents or adults when their children commit violent acts, particularly with guns?
I'm not sure if you're talking about liability on the civil part or just when that case comes before the court. I'll kind of address it, but I do want to just make one point on the last comment. When a gun case comes before the court, there's one point I want to make about having these discussions. On a lot of gun-related charges, there are mandatory sentences. That's just an FYI when people are educating those in the community. And on some of those are such as 5 years of incarceration, and it doesn't matter if you're 18 or not, but on certain things, that may mean 5 years at the Department of Corrections. None of that can be suspended, and it's without the possibility of parole. These sentences are serious, and there is no discretion in the court with a lot of those sentences. So it's important. It's important. In terms of parent liability, I would just want to speak more on the juvenile aspect because who we have in front of us is a defendant in an adult case or the juvenile in a delinquency case. And in a delinquency case, there's some measures to be able to hold parents accountable. But it's hard because you want to hear from the parent what's necessary within the home. There can be some accountability when they're not following through on getting the resources to parents. You're trying to encourage, you're trying to get Department of Juvenile Services to talk with them, to get papers signed, to do certain things. We use contempt proceedings sometimes, few and far between, to hold that parent accountable to get the services for their child that have been identified as being needed. In terms of any liability of a child taking a gun that may be a parent, there's separate things for that. There are certain criminal offenses that can be had. I think there's certain civil, but it really is factually dependent upon what that is.
Thank you very much. These are very complicated, involved questions. It's a complicated and involved issue. I think our panel here this evening has done a remarkable job explaining from each of their vantage points, how they are involved and what they want to see happen. Let's give them a round of applause, please. And we're going to be moving on to a next section here. Thank you again so much for your participation here this evening.
Again, we're so thankful that the panel has given us so much wonderful information. We're going to ask the second set of panelists, Dr. Gaines, Mr. James Lamont, and also Dr. Michael Wood, to please come take your stations. And again, give them a round of applause, please. And I'll take a brief liberty, Vic, I'll take a brief liberty. As was stated, there's so many of my Greek brothers in Alpha who make themselves known. Notice that many of the Alphas are wearing blue and white, Phi Beta Sigma.
Who has control over this microphone right here? Also, I want to direct your attention to our screens here. There is a QR code up on your screens, and those of you who are watching us online, feel free to scan that. That is a survey that will help us to gather more information and hopefully be able to pass that information along to the people who are represented here this evening who actually have the ability to make changes. We welcome your comments, so please be active. This is part of your responsibility as a citizen of Howard County to become definitely involved in what we are doing and talking about here this evening. So please scan that QR code and feel free to leave your comments there. Welcome, please, our second panel. I wonder if you could start down at the far end and introduce yourselves and tell us your name and your title.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Michael Wood. I have a company called Synergistic Solutions. We develop opportunities for growth for youth.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Latoya Gaines. I am a licensed clinical psychologist that specializes in complex and developmental trauma.
Good evening. My name is James Lamont. I'm with the Howard County Public Schools Community Engagement and Partnerships Office, and I also am an Alpha.
So, what was that again? Say it again.
I'm also Alpha Phi
Okay,
Alpha.
that's what I thought. Okay, I want to be sure. Thank you all. Let's give a round of applause to our next group of panelists. Since you stepped up to the mic and said that you're an Alpha, let's start with you. Dr. Lamont, what is the school system considering doing differently to intervene earlier and more effectively with students showing signs of distress and violence?
Yeah, great question. Obviously, it's very important for us as a school system to make sure that anytime we have a student that may be displaying any type of academic or social-emotional concerns, that we have staff in place, a process in place that can provide that student the appropriate level of support they may need. Every school in Howard County Public Schools has what we call a student support team that is comprised of administrators, counselors, psychologists, or PPWs, or social workers, and they meet on a regular basis. And what they do, if a student is not performing as they should or have been, or concerns are brought to this team's attention by referral, whether it's from a staff member or a parent, that team, will convene and have conversations and review the academic piece, the attendance piece, and the social emotional piece, and see what level of possible intervention there is for that student. I will say, I've been in central office for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I was principal of Wild Lake High School, also a social worker. I will say students that come to us, and particularly at a younger age we're seeing now, even more students that have been impacted by, I will say, trauma, and different levels of trauma. And I think, all of our schools over the past 3 years have been getting some trauma-informed training at all of our schools that will be done at the end of this year to try to make our staff more aware of understanding why a child's behavior may be presenting a certain way in front of your class or in school, and just so they have a different lens in regards to how they best interact with that student. So that's just one thing, but also being a social worker as well, former principal, I think it's important just to really lift up the importance of trying to make sure that our school system, we have a huge responsibility to support our students and families, but we cannot do it by ourselves. We have to leverage our community partners, and many of y'all are in here, and it makes a difference. Again, I always say kids, they come to school, they don't live at school, they live at their homes, right, or with their parent or guardian. And I think, for me, we have to continue to make sure we're leveraging the resources and that our families are aware and have access to the opportunities to get those resources for their families, whatever they may need. And but I think that's an ongoing thing. And just listening today, Dr. Ball talked about the YES Engagement Committee. I think that's fantastic because to me, I've been in Howard County for almost 30 years. I think having a committee or a group that is going to work on definitely short-term concerns, but also intermediate, but even more importantly, long-term solutions, right, to our community makes a difference. And to have such a range of people involved, I personally think that's fantastic. And the school system definitely will be part of that because, again, I think that, we all have a role. The school system has a big role, but we have to make sure we're leveraging our community partners. And they do a great job. We have over 1,300 partners, but we have to keep doing a better job of filling in the gaps. And a lot of families we're talking about are the more challenging to meet, to meet their needs or to identify. So, but working together, I think we'd have a better chance of that.
Okay, thank you so very much. Dr. Gaines, let's talk now about trauma. First of all, how do you define trauma in terms that all of us will certainly understand and be able to recognize? And of course, we know trauma is real and often it's unspoken. What should be done right now to make trauma-informed care more accessible and less stigmatized?
Thank you. And since we're representing, I forgot to say I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as well as the Links Incorporated. And so I think a good definition of trauma is anything that overwhelms your ability to cope. And trauma often is something that happens in the past that is continuing to show up in the present, and it disrupts your ability to see yourself in a positive way, to see other people in a positive way, and to see the world around you in a safe and positive way. And so one thing that we can do about trauma-informed care is to make it more accessible is to partner with different organizations that provide that type of service. There are a lot of organizations that do trauma-informed care and provide trauma trainings, and I think we have to be intentional about going out and seeking out those partnerships so that they can come into our schools, so they can come into the justice system and provide this type of information, because a lot of times what we do see is the behavior on the outside. We've talked about this a lot already this evening, is that we see the behavior, but that is a manifestation of what is going on the inside emotionally. So when kids experience trauma, like I said, it disrupts their sense of identity formation, and we've already talked about the intersection of poverty and despair. That despair often comes from psychological trauma that has told that child, I am not good. I am not good, and therefore, am I worth investing in? Am I worth making these positive decisions? If I do make a positive decision, it's not gonna work out for me anyway, because life has taught me that I am not worth anything. And so I think we have to be intentional about creating these partnerships with organizations that are already doing this type of work so that we can respond to our youth differently when we see the behavior.
So let me ask you this follow-up question on that. How does the average person recognize trauma? What are there typical signs or the things that we might be able to recognize in people that we see on a routine basis to identify trauma in their lives and or to make recommendations for help?
Sure. I think it's a really broad question, but one thing I always advise parents and teachers is that if you feel like a child's behavior is an overreaction to the demand that you've placed on them, then typically that's a sign that something else is going on, even with adults. Now, we all know there are adults, you say something to them and it's like, whoa, like, wait a minute, right? Like, usually if something is out of proportion to the demand that's being placed or the question that's being asked, then that is a telltale sign that there's something else going on.
Very good. Thank you so very much. Let's move now to Dr. Michael Wood. Does youth employment have an impact on the quality of life and or mental health?
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Michael Wood, and I am a proud graduate of Norfolk State University. I'm also a brother of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. and I want to say to each and every one of you, without the Omegas who uplift everybody, things don't get done. What I would like to say, my background is in workforce education and development. That's what my terminal degree is in. And what I've seen over the years is the opportunity for our young men and young women to work, but also recognize that it's a challenge when they are working. Most of my research has shown that when a young man or young woman is in the classroom and trying to work, it does hinder their grades. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what the research shows. And I have to say, without a doubt, no child should be working more than 15 hours a week in the classroom, trying to go to school. No child. Particularly at the high school level. I understand scenarios are different. Everybody's household is different. However, if a high school child is working more than 15 hours a week, I can guarantee you their grades are suffering. There's no if and or buts about it. Also, the same at the collegiate level, no more than 20 hours a week. They're young adults. We see that, we understand it, but unfortunately, we see grade slippage at both levels. The question is, as we look at each individual household, what are the needs of that household? And how do we help those young men and young women prepare to go into the workforce? I think it's imperative that the conversations is based on relationship development. One of the two things I've heard today was, how do we help our students be prepared for the next level? Are we building relationships? One. Are we providing the resources? Two. Are we engaging them where they are? Are we giving them an opportunity to be successful in the classroom first, and then giving them those workforce development opportunities for that success? By all means, we all want our children to work, but realistically, we should be pushing them towards the classroom or some sort of training initially.
Okay, very good. Thank you so very much. Mr. Lamont, what is the level or status of police officers within the schools? What's the assessment of the impact where officers have been on site?
Well, currently, we have all of our high schools have school resource officers at this time. And you said the impact while they're on site?
Yeah, exactly.
Being a former principal, I say, it's important to make sure you have a great relationship with our school resource officer as the administrator. The bottom line is, it's a school first. So in regards to any concerns that may have happened during the school day, any possible altercations, our staff is responsible for being the initial person involved with that. And my understanding is, I think the training they've gotten over the past several years, since the MOU has changed, I think that's been very important, and I think it's been done in a positive way in regards to them trying to build more positive relationships with our students, because again, our staff is generally involved. They're a very important presence, I believe, during the school day, also before and after school, but with the understanding that the school staff are the ones that run a school, but having them have relationships with our students, and I think I've been in several trainings over the past few years with SROs throughout the whole county, and it's very important to get that training about developing the positive relationships with our staff. Any opportunity that they have to do that, I think, is important, and I think they've done a really nice job with that.
What has been the benefit of having officers in schools? Does it improve relationships between students, young people, and law enforcement?
Yeah, I think that it does. I think because, and I always say, it's the individual officer and how they handle themselves, in their business, what I say is very important. That's with anything. It could be a teacher. You're talking about individuals. But again, I think the ones that were chosen, have been chosen for school systems that I've known and know now, I think are doing a really good job, because I think throughout the trainings, I've been to several trainings over the past few years, they understand that's a major part of their role in the school system, right? It's not to be the one to go, to a classroom and talk to you. That's not their role. Our staff, that's our staff's role. So I think they're focused more on developing relationships, and being a presence, positive presence in the building, I think is a very important thing for our school system. I think it has made a positive difference.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Gaines, is parental consent required to provide support services to a young person?
Yes. So typically, and it's interesting, we just had a conversation about this today. I work at the Center for Child and Family Traumatic Stress. And so if you're under 18, you do need parental consent to receive mental health services. However, that does vary. Today we had a discussion about in the state of Maryland, you can actually be 12. But I think that also depends on, some organizations have their own standards for who can consent. And so even though in Maryland you can consent at the age of 12, there may be some organizations that may require an adult to still provide consent as well. Now, I think it's also important to discuss the limits of confidentiality within mental health services, because once consent is given, you can't legally share anything unless the student says they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to hurt somebody else, or we suspect any type of abuse.
Do you find any resistance on the part of parents of students who have come and asked for help ever? And if so, how do you resolve that?
Yeah, so it depends. I think for the most part, parents that do refuse have had either they've had negative experiences themselves, or they still hold some stigma about mental health and what that is like. I think it especially shows up in communities of color a lot, that there's still stigma around mental health. And so we try and just provide education to parents because, as also has been mentioned, parents are overwhelmed and they're burnt out, right? And it takes a village. And so why not let us be a part of that village? So this is something that we can take off your plate, that your child can have a safe space to talk about the things that are bothering them that they may not necessarily feel comfortable coming to you about. And it's better that they have someone rather than no one.
Okay, very good. Dr. Wood, is there a connection between academic progress and having a job?
Oh, no doubt about it, first and foremost. What I would like to say, though, that we need to also consider those non-cognitive variables. Let's talk about them for a minute as we get into that question. What are non-cognitive variables? Those are the things that happen outside of the classroom. What's so very important is what happens in our communities, but also when we work with our officers, when we work with our classrooms, when we work with our esteemed guest, who's a psychologist. Those are things that affect our kids in the workforce and in the classroom and at home. What is happening outside those environments, particularly as it affects our students. Working is important. We all got to work to live at some point in time. You work for yourself or you work for someone else. However, I'll go back to my initial premise that our students need to be students first. Allow them to be children. Allow our kids to be children first. We are the resource, though, for them. We talk about the money that we need, that's true. However, without you and everyone in this building, our children cannot succeed. We are that resource. The organization that you're a part of are that resource. What you provide them. Be the mentor that needs to be seen. Model the effort. When our young men and young women look at us, we should be models for them. because they may not have that at home. Be models in the workplace. Go to work. Show your children what work looks like. You know, we all have to get up at some point in time today and get out of bed, go to work, do our 9 to 5, whatever that might be. Those are the models our children need to see. Without showing them the model, they don't know what work looks like. And that's what I'm seeing inside the classroom. Made mention earlier this evening that when our young men and young women came to us after COVID, we saw a deep decline in academic pursuits. A deep decline. At the time I was at Bowie State University, and many of our young men and women were not prepared. Not only were they not prepared in the classroom, they were not prepared in the workforce, and it affected them in a very negative manner. How do we better prepare these folks that go into the workforce and they're not getting even at home? Let's start there. Be the persons and the individuals who mentor our kids toward the successful opportunities that you want them to have. That will take care of that workforce initiative, that education initiative that they may need.
Sharing the job experience, real quick story here. My father was a steel worker. And I remember as a child coming home and complaining about what I had to do on my little job during the summer at the hospital. The worst job I think I ever had, I had to wash pots in the kitchen. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever done in my life. But I was complaining about it and talking to my dad about it. He said, well, I tell you what, come to work with me. And he worked in the steel mill during the summer months when it was hot and it was smoky and it was dirty and it was dangerous. And so the next day I had a whole new perspective. I dive into those pots. I wasn't any better at it, but I dove into that job and had an appreciation. So sharing your job with your young person in your life, I think, is a very important, can be a very valuable lesson. Mr. Lamont, let's talk a little bit about, for a moment, we have seen a number of incidents occur where there has been tragedy in schools. And the responsibility of school leaders is to try to get that school back to normal after a tragedy. What can the school system do to overcome student fear of being injured in school?
That's a great question. Anytime a situation occurs, whether it's in school or in the community, we, as a school system, we have a process. You know, we have emergency response teams, which means like we have counselors from central office, other schools that will come and support that school, maybe for a day, maybe for a couple of days, support the teachers, you know, whatever the issue may be. But we want to make sure that we have an open dialogue with our students. Particularly when something like that happens, students will be able to go down to the student services throughout the day as needed. So we just want to make sure that, you know, we have our finger on the pulse of what the kids are feeling and what the school climate is like as well, and make sure we provide the resources to each and every individual student. And again, like I said, I think the team that comes from central office and other schools, when that happens, I don't know a lot of people realize that, but we have counselors, psychologists from other schools who will come to a school for a day, for a couple of days, depending on what the need of the students is what the school is, and make sure that each and every individual student has a chance to have a conversation. But with that being said, a lot of times when things happen, we also will put out communications first thing in the morning where the teacher will read, in every class will read the same statement to the students, just to make sure everyone understands what's going on, what the concern is, and that they do have that ability throughout the day or at that time to go down to student services where there'll be other supports for them. We want to make sure that, first of all, students are aware of what is occurring, you know what I mean, or what has occurred, and also make sure our staff feel supported, our students feel supported, and that's one thing I will say. I think Howard County as a school system and community has done a really, really good job of making sure when something occurs that we provide the resources to that school or schools as necessary.
Following up on that, what would you want the parents to do? What behaviors would you like the parents to exhibit after a tragedy like that, particularly as it pertains to their children going back to school?
Yeah. You know, I always say, you know, have the conversations. Don't be afraid to have conversations. But also, I will say, if you don't feel comfortable having that conversation, the school system will always generally send out a communication to the parents and families with also a list of resources of how to have a conversation with your student about whatever the related topic may be. I think that is completely invaluable. The number of times I have referred a family to those resources has been many. But I think the fact that the system does provide that information also to parents, because we want to make, every parent does not understand how to have that conversation about what may have occurred. So, but I think the system does a really nice job of making sure the schools, staff, students are feeling supported, but also sharing information with the families about how they can have these conversations and who to reach out to if you need to reach out to somebody, or if your kid is not responding well enough, after your conversation, please reach out to a student support team, your counselor, administrator, and they will know how to best, take that next step when that student does come back to school the next day. But yeah, so I think communication is very important. And don't think everyone knows how to have it. Many people don't know how to have a conversation. Many I don't even know. I look at the resources sometimes, so I think it's very important for us to make sure we continue to share that information with our families.
Okay, very good. Dr. Gaines, what do you need from the county or the community to expand your reach and provide meaningful mental health resources to our young people?
That's a good question. I think, so a lot of times when I talk with teens, particularly, there seems to be this disconnect between what they're feeling and how they feel adults will respond to them for what they're feeling. And so I think that we have to be more intentional about meeting kids where they're at and being more willing to listen. We listen and we don't judge, right? Like being able to just listen to them and meet them where they're at and not shame them for maybe the behaviors that we see that can be detrimental to them, but really try and understand what is going on beneath the surface. Because a lot of times, especially with trauma, a lot of times the priority is a sense of safety. Their safety has been interrupted, and so a lot of the things that they do is in an effort to regain a sense of safety and control over their environment because things have been so unpredictable. So I think our priority as adults, as we work in systems, is to really try and meet kids where they're at and listen to them, because they'll as long as they're comfortable, they're going to tell you what they need, but we just have to be willing to meet them where they're at.
Okay, very good. Dr. Wood, what suggestions do you have on how to impact youth growth and maturity, social interaction, and problem resolution?
Interesting, that's a great question. I'm gonna take it in 3 or 4 parts that you provided. One of the things we talked about was mentorship first, okay? What mentors are available to our students? Second, what opportunities are we providing as mentors for the student? And third, think about it like this. Why aren't we producing more entrepreneurs? Why aren't we helping our young men and young women become entrepreneurs? That's where our society is leaning towards more and more. Much more stay-at-home opportunities are coming about in the areas of AI, in the areas of, I would say IT in general, okay? That's what I'm seeing across the spectrum. The opportunity to engage our students in those spaces and to help them develop themselves, teach them how to develop their own businesses, teach them how to engage others, teach them how to inform themselves intellectually in spaces that we are not in. Some spaces that they don't even want us in sometimes. Think about it. We all have faced this at some point in time in our careers. How do we help our kids into those spaces to help them better themselves? In the area of workforce development, there is always an opportunity to grow and to develop. I also believe that we have gotten away from it to some degree, these hands-on technologies that probably make more money than most of us sitting here. I say this because when I was at a former school, at a former high school, I had a young man who was in and out of the system. He came to school with anklet on, okay? Smart young man, but I tried to sit down with him and understand his scenario, what was going on with him. He was at home, taking care of mom. Mom was working 2 jobs. He had younger siblings, and he was out there in the street. I told him, I said, look, if you follow my lead, I will find you an opportunity that's far greater than what you're doing and will get you on the right side of the law. What he did, and he loved working on cars. Fast forward, got him into a community college after high school, graduated high school, got him a certificate for BMW, walked out the door making more money than I was. I say this because I want us to understand there's opportunities for us, our young men and young women. We have to really develop that path. Think about it. Our parents cut that path for us. They gave us the directionality that we need. Some of our kids didn't have that in this environment, don't have it in this environment. Sometimes it's not at home either. How do they look at us and say, how can you help me be better? From a workforce position, that's the kind of people that we want. We want people that's going to go out into the community, go out in the world, not only work, but also give back like we are doing tonight. Second, last half of your question. The last half of your question. Can you repeat that for me?
Yes. What suggestions do you have on how to impact youth growth and maturity, social interaction, and problem resolution?
I'm gonna start with problem resolution. I've seen this often with our students. We don't communicate well enough. We get very defensive initially. Our kids get very defensive because either they don't understand or they feel threatened in some manner. How can we as adults help them better understand how they should work with others? Are we being the model? What do we need to do differently for that success, for that young man and young woman? I think it's imperative that as we go through this life with them and they watch us, we set a standard. We set a standard for what we want our children to be. They need to see that standard. We need to hold them accountable. They need to hold us accountable. But I also think as adults, we need to communicate better. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We just can't chastise without giving direction. Can't do it. Not in this environment. You know, I know when I was coming up, very old school, my father said, son, I love you, but I'm going to apply the rule of knowledge to the seat of learning. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Difficult to do in this environment today. Very difficult. So how do we react differently? How do we support them differently? How do we get them to understand and talk their way through a negative scenario, instead of, and also have the strength to walk away? That's something that, we weren't taught very often. I mean, sometimes you just need to walk away from it. Our kids need to learn how to walk away from a negative situation, and not bow down to the peer pressure. That's something that I believe has always been a challenge for our young men and young women, especially more so in this era as we see what we're facing in other political environments.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Mr. Lamont, has there been a resolution of the issue of out-of-district student offenders being transferred to Howard County Public Schools?
Yeah, that was a very, very big topic over the past few months. My understanding is that there has been some changes at the state level. I will say that as a school system, we do I think we've always had good communication. I think we've improved our communication with our partners as well, from DJS and state's attorney, whomever. But also with our process now, if a student is committed what they call like a community offense, and I believe it may include certain types of offenses, we have a program called the Passage Program that is now back in place again, where that student will go to the Passage Program prior to them going back to one of our comprehensive schools. And I know that's just been a change over the past few months, since a lot of different decisions at the state level and conversations at the county level as well. I think the communication piece is a very important piece. Again, when we know that there's certain concerns about any student, we have a process in place now. We always did, but we do have the Passage Program back in place where that student will actually go there, until it's determined they can go back to comprehensive school. So yes, there's been a lot of conversations about that in the past few months.
Okay. This is going to be our final question. Dr. Gaines, I'm going to take a little privilege here and deviate from what we have here, because we are in an era right now where there is a lot of uncertainty. Living in a very diverse community, we're seeing a lot of things that are happening nationally that create some angst for all of us here at home. And when people get a little nervous, sometimes they get a little bit more tense. There could be more of a propensity for violence. How do we address that in a common sense way and explain this to our children and prevent them from acting out as a result of what they're feeling?
So there's a couple of different parts to the question. So I think as a community, we need to, one, check in with ourselves about our own internal reactions to what's happening. We all come from different walks of life, different experiences, and so our perceptions of things are all going to be different, and I feel like we all have different needs. So we need to know ourselves well enough to know what we need in order to be able to cope, because our children's ability to cope is going to be dependent on our ability to cope. There's this concept in psychology called co-regulation, and what that means is that a caregiver and a child, or a mentor and their mentee, right? Like in that relationship, we cope together. And we can't do that unless we're able to effectively show up for ourselves. And so we need to know what it is that we need to do to take care of ourselves. This work is hard, right? Anybody that works with kids knows that the work is hard, it's tireless, sometimes it's thankless, or a lot of times it's thankless, right? And so we need to be more diligent about checking in with ourselves and acknowledging our own needs and taking time out to take care of ourselves. Now, I think in regards to the violence, again, we need to be understanding what kids need in our communities in terms of services, because it's not just mental health, right? Community violence is a public health thing, and so we need to address it from a lot of different avenues, and I'm so glad that we're having conversations like this that incorporate different systems, because we all have to work together in order to address the problem. So we can't just stop at mental health, right? We can't just stop in the schools. We can't just stop in the justice system. If we're not going to be addressing things like poverty and housing and substance use and all of these different things together, then we're going to continue to see this issue. So I think that we need to continue having events and forums like this where we can all come together, talk about what's on our hearts, what's on our minds, but then in addition to that, what are we doing proactively as a community to be able to address all of this from different angles?
Okay, thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause for this group of panelists. Thank you all so very much for your contributions so far. At this point in our program, we're going to take a very short break, and then we'll come back with more community reaction.
And I'm going to take a little bit of liberty in the interest of time. We are not going to take a formal break, but certainly those of you who need to take a break can do that as we transition to the last part of our program. And thank you again, Vic, for being such a wonderful, insightful moderator. Because it is so important for everyone to recognize that this takes effort and sacrifice, we're going to ask those elected officials that are present, please stand. Dr. Angela Williams will come next, but in the meantime, each one of you who are elected politician, representative, please stand so you can be recognized. And now, there's one more very, very, very important item. Everyone needs to recognize that what takes place here is because of all the different organizations that are present. And you may have heard a little laughter as we jested back and forth about some of our groups, but I'm going to ask every member of the Divine Nine who's present, whether you're AKA, Zeta Phi Beta, Phi Beta Sigma, Omega Psi Phi, Kappa Alpha Psi, please stand right now because your work in the schools is critical. These are some of the organizations that are working. Thank you so much.
So while I have the microphone, I'm going to take a personal privilege also. So again, I am Dr. Angela L. Williams, and I am honored to serve as the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Iota Lambda Omega chapter. And so as you heard, on Monday, March 31st, the Youth Engagement Strategies Yes Council was established by executive order by Dr. Calvin Ball in response to the urgent need for coordinated, community-driven strategies that uplift and empower our youth. I'm also honored to serve as a co-chair of the Yes Council along with Mr. Bruce Nelson. Together, we are working with a dynamic group of stakeholders, including educators, nonprofit leaders, mental health professionals, youth advocates, and young people themselves. And we are here to shape and implement bold strategies that will address both the challenges and opportunities facing our youth today. The mission of the Yes Council is to develop a comprehensive framework for youth engagement, mentorship, workforce development, and economic mobility in Howard County. We will be focusing again on workforce development and career exploration, internships and apprenticeships pathways, mentorships and positive youth development, violence prevention and community safety,
The Yes Council has planned as far as working with the Howard County Public School System. The African American Roundtable was developed about 15 years ago as a powerful voice to address the needs and concerns of African Americans here in Howard County. We are a vibrant coalition of social, civic, professional, spiritual, and cultural organizations united by a shared commitment to enhancing the quality of life for African Americans here across the county. Through civic engagement, advocacy, and community service, the AACR raises awareness, empowers residents, and actively works to reduce disparities and advance equity. Our mission is to improve overall quality of life for African Americans in Howard County. To achieve this, the AACR connects families with essential resources, promotes social and economic well-being, and ensures residents are equipped to thrive. One of the wonderful things about the African American Community Roundtable is we consist of 31 organizations, many of which are in this room right now. So I'd like to take this opportunity to do what Reverend Barnes did earlier today, and thank you for all of the work that you do in the Howard County Public School System and in the community at large. So thank you again to all of the organizations that make up the roundtable. We appreciate your service. Now on to the call of action that Dr. Angela Williams started, and I will continue. We have 13 high schools here in Howard County. Out of that 13, 4 critically need our support right now. And there are 4 middle schools that critically need our support right now. What we are asking is that you partner with us right now to support these 8 schools through mentoring programs that we have developed. You don't have to put in the work to create these programs. We have already done it for you. What we're asking you to do is come and join us in partnership. We will connect you with other partners and make it easy. All we need is your time and your talent, and we will help connect you to the youth that need your support. Our youth are the future leaders, innovators, and change makers of our community, and they need you. We're calling on passionate individuals, community members, and local organizations to partner with us in mentoring our next generation. By working together, we can help our young people discover positive, productive outlets for academic skills, explore career pathways, and build the confidence and character they need to lead. This is more than volunteering, it's investing in the future of Howard County. Let's come together to inspire, uplift, and prepare our youth to step into their full potential. Will you answer the call? Thank you.
We are almost done, but there is one critical change that is being made. This is heartfelt because of the fact that some of you are not aware of some of the absolute fear that some of our young people have in going to school. Recently, Reverend Turner, myself, and a few other dedicated men of Kappa Alpha Psi and a few other groups were in an emergency meeting at Oakland Mills Middle School. Instead of having an open period of a couple of questions, I thought it might be better to have the actual principal of Oakland Mills Middle School, who's dealing with this so directly, take the next few moments instead of asking for questions from the audience. This is Principal Regina McClendon, Oakland Mills Middle School.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. This is really difficult for me. And as I sat here and I listened to what the members of the panel said and other people, I'm like, wow, there's a whole piece that's missing that people just don't seem to get. And I kind of think, and I'm not even going to apologize for this, but if I'm being selfish, I'm being selfish. But I feel like I'm like kind of the missing piece here. From December to February, I experienced 4 deaths of former students. One from alcohol intoxication, one who was murdered by 4 other students on the top of Kilimanjaro and Helen Dorsey Way, another one who had a food allergy attack, and the other one who was murdered at the mall. The one who had the food allergy attack and the one who was murdered at the mall were best friends. Blake McCrae, on February the 15th, carried his casket out of this church, and 7 days later, he was shot in the head. So these young men sat at the table in my office, the one who was murdered at Kilimanjaro and Helen Dorsey Way. Those 5 students sat in my office and broke bread together. So as I sit here and I hear, we need to do this, we need to do that, I'm drowning because I have a connection with these young people. When the young man at the mall, when he was murdered, and I got the bulletin across my phone that 2 teens were shot at the mall, I was like, I'm not even paying attention to that because I can't be it again. And then my phone started ringing. Text messages. I said, I'm not even answering. I'm not going to be it again. Then my son calls me. He said, Mommy, people are looking for you. They said Blake was shot. I'm like, I'm not it. Then my work phone rings. I pick it up, and it's Blake's mom crying. I'm at shock trauma. Can you come? So, people think being a principal is just sitting there budgeting, making sure staffing is done, making sure field trips are planned, making sure that instructional stuff is done. No, it's more than just that. And I have to preface this by saying, I am a member of Oakland Mills community. I'm a graduate of Oakland Mills High School. I've been at Oakland Mills Middle School for probably about 22 years. So Oakland Mills is home to me. I spent 5 days at the hospital, never missed a day of work, because I then had to go back to school and be the shoulders for the staff members and for the community members that were grieving these deaths. And I still had to show up for myself. I had to show up for the community. I had to show up for this mom. I was there when they said he was brain dead. I was there when they went back and forth what day they're going to take him off the ventilator. I was there when we went to Celebration Church to plan the funeral. Day in and day out, day in. Now I have 2 siblings at my school. Both of their brothers are deceased, who sit in my office day in and day out. That's a lot. It's a lot for me, it's a lot for them, it's a lot for the community, it's a lot for these young men. The disconnect with me is all this is happening in Oakland Mills community, and I don't feel the love, to be honest with you. Like, no one has reached out to me to say, hey, sister, what can we do? Wait a minute, let me take that back. Henry Poley, member of Kappa Alpha Psi, he has reached out and he's been there for me. So I have to say that. But other than that, I'm like drowning. We had that emergency meeting with Reverend Barnes came out, Bishop Robbie came out, and some other people, and I so appreciated that. And the reason why they came out is because I knew that our community needed some healing. I have mothers here, single moms that can't kind of manage. I have young children that think, oh, we need to get guns. There's so many moving pieces here that I see on the front line. And I feel like I'm living this and no one is asking me, like, are you okay? Or what can we do? Because this is our community. These are our young people. And they're not gonna stop. They need our men in our community to stand up. I don't need to be in the middle of it. I can guide you, but I need you all to show up and be there for these young men because they are struggling. They are angry. They're hurt. They need you all. So what we're going to do on April the 26th at Celebration Church, we're having some healing sessions. And people have been amazing. I've called people, hey, I need support. I need help. Ben from the local children's board, I love you, Ben. He's like, hey, come talk to me. We can definitely help you with food. RJ practices. They're going to do some healing meditation circles. They're from out of DC, but they do pro bono work for Howard County Public School Systems. They're going to sit in some healing circles with our young men. Right here, Henry, stand up, Henry. Henry is my partner in all this work. Henry is leading the young men. He's leading the charge. Because they need men. They need men that look like you all to help us out with this. So I just thought it was really important that you all hear from me. I have not been putting my oxygen mask on because I've been standing in the gap for this grieving mom. I've been standing in the gap for another mom who lost her son suddenly and then she got into some issues and then all the kids are there and they're looking for me. I don't take off from work. It's probably why I'm sick now because I'm not putting my mask on. I'm checking me, and only I'm checking me. Henry checks me too. But other than that, no one else is helping. So I do need you all's help. We definitely need you all's help to get some young men into these healing circles because we have to start healing. We have to start acknowledging, and we need our brothers to show up for these young men because they're not listening to anyone. So we hope that this is the start. So Henry has plenty of flyers, my number's on the flyer, anything that I can do to support you all so we can support these young people, please reach out to us. And thank you so much for this time.
Our last presenter tonight is Dr. Diane Martin, who's community liaison for St. John's Baptist Church and also a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority.
As stated, I am Dr. Diane Martin, the immediate past president of the Columbia, Maryland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I'm also the director of the Family Resource Center for St. John Baptist Church. Tonight has been riveting. I hope you heard what I heard, especially that last message, and that we respond accordingly. If you're not able to do, talk to others, share the information with others. We have much work to do and lots of people to engage who are not in this space tonight. We were given 3 goals earlier. They were: connect to plan for a future of safety, learn about programs and resources to support a safe community, and lastly, to act and generate ideas to move us forward. If you think we have met those goals, let's give the planning committee a round of applause. We've done just that, and I hope you are excited and feel even more committed to work toward a safer and more connected community. We have a mentoring program right here at St. John Baptist Church, which is in the Family Resource Center, and it is called Lunch and Learn, in which we go in and meet with students during the day and after school. So if you have not found a niche of where you can mentor, the words mentoring and building relationships has been mentioned quite a few times this evening. Let's act now and get connected. Thank you.
You're welcome. Pastor Turner, our host and one of the major leaders of all things here in this community, who's so dedicated and passionate, will close us out. Pastor Robert Turner.
On behalf of St. John Baptist Church, I want to thank each of you for being a part of this conversation, this vital conversation that we've had this evening. I want you to know that your presence here shows that we're not only concerned about violence impacting our community, but it also shows that we are committed to being a part of the solution. And so let me begin by asking the members of the planning team that made this evening possible to please stand so that we might celebrate them, so that we might thank them for their vision, their dedication, and their hard work. And then we want to give our moderator, Vic Carter. No one does it quite like Vic Carter. We want to give him his affirmation. We also want to thank all of the panelists and all of the program participants representing county government, law enforcement, education, the judiciary, mental health, and the voices of our students and our parents. Thank you for sharing your perspectives as well as your passion. And then we want to recognize our county executive, Dr. Calvin Ball, and his newly appointed members of the Youth Engagement Strategy Council. Yes, let's give them a round of applause for their service. And then to all who joined us here this evening here in the sanctuary as well as online, I want you to know that your voice matters, your presence matters, and your continued engagement will help shape the future of our community. Now, before we leave, we invite you to pick up a boxed lunch available at the tables in the narthex. We want to thank Celebration Church. We want to thank the African American Community Roundtable of Howard County. We want to thank St. John Baptist Church for providing these meals. Let's give some affirmation for them. Now, as we prepare to close, I just want to remind you that tonight is not the finish line. Tonight is just the starting point. This conversation must continue, this work must continue, and we must remain committed as individuals, as organizations, and as a united community. And so let's please stay connected and stay informed as the County Executive's Youth Engagement Strategy Council continues its important work, proposes strategies and partnerships, and prepares its final report later on this year. Please note that the path ahead requires all of us working together in unity and purpose to build a safer, stronger Howard County for our children and for generations to come. And so thank you again for coming this evening. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless our county.
That concludes the program, but because this is so historic, I'm going to ask personally, as you all leave and get your box meals, that all of the members of the Divine Nine gather here for a picture with the panelists, with our elected officials, with the pastor, so that we can have a picture of this historic occasion. Joining now, those from the Divine Nine, you know who you are, those who are the panelists,